life spent with you. So here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy.
This morning we began talking about whether or not, as a nation, we still have the motto in our heart of "In God we trust." We know that as we look back at some of the aspects of the Declaration of Independence, the Mayflower Compact, and other writings upon which this nation was founded, that very much so are we a nation that was founded upon the principle of trusting God truly and completely. I indicated in the sermon this morning that time did not allow to look at the four places or the four references to God in the Declaration of Independence. But if you look at it, you see that the framers talked about God being the author of all things, that God is the one who gave us, the creator is the one who gave us our rights, that as the judge to whom we appeal our motives from the love of liberty, and then of course the providence, indicating a movement toward divine providence. And there are others. But the realization of God is the one who gives us our freedom, our liberty, our rights. And we need to hold on to that. Because sometimes, and I rein myself in, sometimes we think that the government is the bastion of all things of our freedom and our liberty. And truly, they are not. They're given to us by God. And so what we did, we spent some time looking backward. And then we talked about how we've been manipulated to accept things that are totally contrary to whatever God would have us and want us to be about. The destruction of the home and family. If you destroy home and family, you destroy the foundation, then indeed there is problems. But we don't want to go back and repreach all of that. So let's look a little bit closer. The assault on education is truly in evidence. We know in 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8 that we are to provide for our own. That as a man, as I start a family with my wife, that I have a responsibility to see that the family has a roof over their head, clothes on their back, food in which to eat. But also I have a responsibility to see to it that they are trained morally, physically, and with regards to educationally. So when Paul writes to Timothy and points out, but if anyone, I'm reading verse 8 now of 1 Timothy 5, but if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he is denied the faith, is worse than an unbeliever. Now, I may be taking that a little bit out of context, but I do look at it as a proviso. I have a responsibility to make sure that my children have the secular and the spiritual education. As long as they're there and in the home, that's going to be talked about. That's what we're about, secularly, and even more importantly, spiritually. There's a song that Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young made famous, called Teach Your Children. Well, that's what we're called upon to do. Teach your children well. Well, whether or not we do that is another question. Do we turn it all over to the hands of somebody else? When we were raising our sons, there was a little bit of a discussion in our house. And the discussion centered around, should we homeschool our children? Or should we put them in secular education? I was the one who was opposed to homeschooling. Linda wanted to do it. I said, no, we don't have to. Secular education did all right by us. And so we kept our boys in secular schools. Looking back now, I wish I would have done otherwise. We took Adam out of secular education the last year we were here in California. Next to last year. Adam was in 8th grade. And we took him out, put him in a homeschool. Linda taught him certain subjects. I taught him in other subjects. He was tested when he went in to homeschool to find out where he was. And we were disappointed because I would have thought, he's my son. He's Linda's son. And we saw where he was. And I'm not saying he was behind. I'm not saying that at all. But we went back and had him tested after the year because that's what was required. Let's test him now. And I couldn't believe it. The difference that a year made in homeschooling from here to here. Was it because of Linda and my teaching? No, I don't think so. Because see, what was told to us as our son went to school, that during any class, he would get between 12 and 20 minutes at the most of any kind of instruction during an hour's period. And I'm going, what do you do? Got discipline problems. We have issues that we have to deal with as far as documentation. We have this, we have that. And so that's what we can come up with. Between 12 and 20 minutes. And so Linda and I were able to give him more than that. Okay, Adam, you're going to spend 40 minutes. We're going to go history with you. And I would try to make history fun for him. I'd sing him stupid songs. We'd talk about different aspects. And Linda, she would teach him about mathematics. She would approach it differently. We talked about binary and different things of that nature, but not people. Binary stars, the universe. Education should be the bench rock of everything in society. Do you realize that 2 of the 3 largest unions in this nation are teachers' unions? National Education Association, American Federation of Teachers. Huge. Huge. They have a great influence over everything that's done in and around schools. The curriculum, what to accept, what to teach. Theodore Roosevelt, you can see his quote on the overhead. He stated, "A thorough knowledge of the Bible is worth more than a college education." I appreciate what Adam does in the back. I'm blown away when he comes up and quotes different things to me. Now, and I just kind of look at him, and he knows the look. Our 2 older sons, do the same thing from time to time. And I'm holding on to Proverbs 22. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart. Plant the seed. That's what Roosevelt is talking about. It's worth more than a college education. Because that Bible teaching is going to stave away what happens now in college education. Look at the next quote from Theodore Roosevelt. Then we'll start tying scripture in. There is not in all America a more dangerous trait than the deification of mere smartness, unaccompanied by a sense of moral responsibility. Oh, how true that is. I did not teach at a large college or a really recognized large university. Eastern Washington State University is not one of the ones that just roll out of your tongue, nor was the college in Yakima. But even in my time with them, I saw danger. Danger of individuals trying to put forth an agenda. And I wrote curriculum for a while. And the instructors would come and we'd go over everything. And it was necessary to do in order for funding, for grants, whatnot. I hated doing it. But I was asked to do it, and I wanted the insurance. And so the college was doing everything it could to keep me part-time, to keep me on the payroll, and so that I could get insurance. And so they asked me to write curriculum, to deal with curriculum for a number of different classes. Okay. And the things that were being advocated, and I'm talking now 20 years ago, were things that I could not agree with. And I said, that's not even remotely within the framework of where you need to be going with this class. Why are you going there? And then when we have meetings, department meetings, meetings with the instructors, and you would talk and you would hear different things being brought out. And I'm going, whoa, these are the people teaching. And if this gets passed along to somebody and gets embedded in them, they're going to come out and do the same thing. And as I was in those meetings, I remembered back to when I first went to college. Out of high school, impressionistic, yes. And I remember the teachings. And I was not a Christian. I was nothing really religious. And I remembered the rules for radicals that was being taught, being advocated. And I saw it in many of the professors. Some of my friends, well, actually, people that I knew through my older brothers, I knew what they stood for politically. I knew. I was proud of them at the time. They taught at Cal State Northridge, Cal State Dominguez Hills, University of Southern California, all sorts of different colleges. And when they would come and they would talk, they were proud of what they were putting their students through and pressing on to them. And then that gets translated down to lower and lower grades. I really didn't think much about it until I became a Christian. Began to see the changing structure of society. Proverbs, the first 7 chapters, deals with the teaching of our children and how we need to be involved in it. Sad to say that, unfortunately, the way that our society has changed, that when parents do challenge it, Do challenge the curriculum. Do challenge what's being taught. They are silenced by school boards. And when we vote, we don't know very much about who's running for school boards. So we just usually vote in the incumbent. It is on the it's on the micro that we need to pay attention. We can change this community if we pay attention. But what's been happening is when parents rise up, I was talking to Ralph about it at lunch, they're silenced. And then what we've seen in some cases where there's an investigation done on the parents. And that ought not be the way it is here. But like I said, I'm neither Democrat, Republican, libertarian, whatever. My children are grown. My grandchildren are grown. My grandchildren are in college. I had a grandson recently graduate with a master's degree. Proud of him. But I don't know what he was taught. Don't know. Scared to death to know. But we as parents and grandparents need to start letting our voices heard because we're challenged to teach our children. Do you realize the greatest answers to life are found in the Bible? I taught human relations classes, taught some psychology classes, taught classes on critical thinking. And a lot of what was taught, also taught classes on technical writing. So it wasn't just, it was technical writing as well. Boringest class I ever taught. Boring. But anyways, when you begin to think of questions, where did I come from? Where did I come from? I'm struggling with that one right now. Why did God make man? I've told you I'm doing this. I've got a stack about that thick of papers and thoughts and articles that I printed out that deal with it. But the answer is Genesis 1:1. And God said, let us make man in our image. Excuse me, in 1:26. 1:1 is in the beginning God created. God created us as a manifestation of his love. He couldn't do anything else. His love had to be made evident. He needed mankind to serve as caretakers, yes, but also to carry on the work that he wanted. There's a lot of components there. But we can't find the answer to where did I come from? Why am I here? We can't find that answer with man. It's going to be speculation at best. But yet they teach it with authoritative emphasis. We know emphatically. No, we take it by faith. What we teach, what the Bible teach. Faith cometh by hearing, hearing by the word of God. Romans 10:17. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Because God is trustworthy, because in God we trust. I accept what he says. Do I understand it? Do I understand how he made everything, how everything's held into place? No. But I accept it by faith. I didn't see it, but I trust God. Absolutely trust God. And we accept him at his word. So many things. People talk about, well, how many genders are there? What do you want to identify? And now we've got social scientists telling us, well, you can identify as any number of things and it'll all be okay. But it's kind of like the little boy there with the dunce cap on. No, there's two genders. How do you want to identify? Well, I want to identify as a spark plug. And the reason I say spark plug, Linda had to have spark plugs put in her car. $600. $600 for 4 spark plugs. If I had identified as a spark plug, maybe I got a discount. But you're going to identify whatever you want societally. And a lot of people are doing that. I want to identify. I might have been born as a girl. I want to identify as a man. And the vice versa. The greatest questions that man could ever ask, the answer is found simply in the scripture. One day we're going to have to stand before God. One day. Go back into the book of Micah. And in Micah, let's go into the 6th chapter of Micah. And we're going to drop down into, so let's go down to verse 8. He has told you, O man, what is good? And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, to walk humbly with your God. So why am I here on earth? Micah 6:8 just told us. Why? Well, that's why. So we strive to do it. We could talk about what happens when life is over, as it is appointed for man to die once. And after this comes the judgment. Hebrews 9:27. All of these questions are answered. Do we really trust in God? When we take away the sanctity of life? When we look at life as something that's cheap, we do not really respect it. Go back into the book of Exodus. And in Exodus, we find there that the sanctity of life is brought forth. Exodus 21, verse 22 beginning. If men struggle with each other, strike a woman with a child, so that she has a miscarriage, yet there's no further injury, he shall surely be fined as the woman's husband may demand of him, and he shall pay as the judge decides. But if there's any further injury, then you shall appoint as a penalty life for life. Miscarriage means simply not carrying the child to full term. For whatever reason, the child was born, shall we say, prematurely. And if the child lives, great. There's going to be a little bit of fine that you caused discomfort. We do the same thing today. Greg got hit by another car. Okay, nothing happened to Greg. But there's going to be the penalty. The other person had to pay for Greg's car to get fixed, or his insurance company. We understand those things. But if Greg was injured, there's going to be penalty for pain and suffering, etc. That's all they're talking about back there. Pain and suffering. The child lived. However, even if it's accidental, according to Exodus 22, they're struggling. The woman's hit. And the child dies. the one who hit her is going to be charged accordingly. Now that's the sanctity of life. Back in Proverbs 6, verse 17. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood. Innocent blood. That child, from the point of conception, is a human entity. Human zygote, who grows into a fetus, etc. And if it is destroyed, it is wrong. And the scriptures teach that. On the overhead, 511,000 was the number of abortions performed in the first 6 months of 2023. Now that's according to the New York Times, September 7th of this year. That's over 1 million aborted in this country in a year. Defies description. Defies what's really at the root of it, what it started with. But let's not do that. Let's just let that number sit there. And then let's talk about mercy killings, euthanasia. 3,368 prescriptions for lethal medications were written in Oregon and Washington back in the year 2021. 3,000 people were aided in committing suicide. 10,064 medical assisted suicide in Canada in 2021. It's not right. The sanctity of human life has to be respected, has to be upheld. And yet, if it is allowed for these things to penetrate deeper and deeper into our society, there's going to be no way to turn back. If you go back into the book of Genesis, and in Genesis 9, go down into verse 5. And surely I will require your lifeblood. For every beast I will require it. From every man's brother, I will require the life of the man. Whoever sheds man's blood, shall his blood be shed. For him in the image of God, he made man. And as for you, be fruitful and multiply. Populate the earth abundantly. Multiply in it. That's what he told Noah and his family. So prior to that, there was shedding of blood, which brought about the degradation of mankind, God bringing the flood. Now, from the flood forward, life is to be looked at as sacred. Life is to be looked at as respected, whether it be in utero or whether it be a person that is aged or whatever. It is to be respected. And it is to be tried to continue on. So do we really trust God when we allow for abortion? When we allow for euthanasia? Do we really trust God when in our schools there's an agenda being pushed that's going to deviate from what we were established on? The principles for which we were established as a nation. We were endowed from the Creator And now we have those who teach our children that the Creator is nothing, that we don't have to follow that we don't have to look at the sacredness of marriage, tear down the foundations. Again, I think back to when I was following radicalism in college, hearing different things pop up. Oh, now I understand where that fits into the puzzle. Remember, I talked about the puzzle Adam and Linda are putting together. I don't like to do puzzles, I'll be honest with you. Don't like to do them. I like to do word puzzles, maybe. In fact, Linda does the jumble. I'll give it to her every day. She'll look at the words, and then I challenge myself. What's the answer at the bottom? And I want to do it without using the letters. Okay, it's got to be this. It's got to be this. So here's the answer. See if the letters jibe up. That kind of puzzle I like. But when you begin looking at these things and you begin seeing where it fits, oh, that's why they said this. That's why they were trying to push this issue. I remember that now. And once it gets in there, the crack and the fissures get wider and wider and wider. So the foundation for separation was not laid in the 60s. It was laid in the 50s. It was laid back then. Actually, some would argue back as far back as Woodrow Wilson, and when he was incapacitated and his wife had to take over. Some would offer that. And the issuing in of eugenics started to unravel. But there was a lot more unraveling going on. It's just that now we're either 100 years in to this separation in the country, or we're a quarter century in, or a half century in. Regardless, it's been going on. And it starts to crack and fissure more. Just like a crack in a windshield. When we took our trip to Washington a couple years ago, driving down a road and there's lots of rocks. And a rock came up and hit our windshield, put a little chip in it. Called the insurance company and said, oh, okay, take it over such and such. And I thought, boy, they're going to put in a new windshield. No, they just kind of fixed it. But I noticed yesterday that that little spot that they fixed is now about that big. So I'm going to have to call them again on Monday, Tuesday, because that crack is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's what happens. In our lifetime, if it goes on unbated like it is, we're not going to recognize society. So what do? We talk about it. We strengthen those around us. And we pray for our leaders that they will finally get a backbone, that they will be people of principle. After the lesson this morning, was talking with someone who said, how is it possible that a civil servant who is designed to make about $125,000 a year to maybe $200,000 a year, how is it somebody like that becomes a multimillionaire on a salary like that? I don't know. But we want people who are people of principle. Pray for that. Pray for it. There's a congressman who, when he ran, he said, I'm only going to serve 3 terms. After the third term, he stepped down. And everybody goes, why? So because that's what I said I would do. I want somebody like that back in Congress because he was a person of principle. Did I agree with everything he did? No. Because as I said, I'm neither Republican, nor Democrat, nor Libertarian. I don't associate with a political group. But what we have to do is we have to get back to understanding the truth and living for the truth. So pray for it. Because so many things are just kind of shuffled under the carpet. It's no big issue. I used on the overhead, winked at. I never could wink right. When I do that, people think, what's wrong with his eye? But I'm just trying to wink. But no. I tried winking at Linda when I first met her. She kind of went, what in the world? But some things we just wink at. The first justice of the United States said this. His name was John Jay. Americans should select and prefer Christians as their rulers. You go back and read about John Jay. Interesting man. And that quote is truly, truly powerful because you realize the control and the rule that the various men and women have over us each and every day. And yes, we want people of principle. Turn back into 1 Peter, 2nd chapter, verse 13. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and the praise of those who do right. For such is the will of God. By doing right, you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. Act as free men. Do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as bondslaves of God. Honor all men. Love the brotherhood. Fear God. Honor the king. Well, we don't have a king. We do have a president. We may not agree with him. Again, any of them that have come along. Nevertheless, we are to pray for them. Pray that there'll be people of principle. Go back into the book of Romans. And in Romans, go into the 13th chapter. Verse 1. Let every person be in subjection to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, he who resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior. Well, were you ever, when you were younger, did you like to see police cars coming around? Nope. I sure didn't. I think that's kind of where I got glib of tongue because they would come around and my friends would always put me to talk to them. And for some reason or another, we were able to snake away. But if I wasn't doing wrong, why would I have needed to worry? Now, when I see a policeman and they're parked in a no parking zone, I'll go up to the car and he'll go, can I help you? And I go, yeah. If I were parked here, what would you do to me? Give you a ticket? How come you can be here? We're the police. We can do whatever we want. Nuh-uh. You can't do whatever you want. I've done that several times. Linda goes, you don't have to do that. Don't go over there. Don't. We don't have money for bail. But I do it nonetheless because they need to be held accountable. They can't just break the law, nor can we. And as long as we stay within the law, we have nothing to fear. Do what is good. You will have praise from the same. Well, time's running out. Turn back to 1 Timothy. I heard Janice guffaw on that one. 1 Timothy, 2nd chapter. First of all, I urge that entreaties and prayers, petitions, thanksgiving be made on behalf of all men. Thanksgiving? Yes. We are fortunate to live in this country. It is flawed, yes. Societally, we're going the wrong way. But we need to pray about it. We need to be fervent in our prayers. The effective prayers of righteous individuals can accomplish so much. Don't leave God out of the equation. Pray. Pray. And so Paul goes on to say, thanksgivings. People from all over the world want to come here. They want to be here. Be made on behalf of all men, for kings and those who are in authority, in order that we may lead a tranquil and quiet life in all godliness and dignity. That's what we want, to live a quiet life. We cannot have moral depravity accepted and celebrated. We can't. And that's what's going on. Now, we got to get back to in God we trust. Maybe at one time it was there. Maybe at one time it was true. But now, I don't know. I don't know. The lesson is yours this afternoon. I trust that I didn't get you too discouraged, too downhearted, but hopefully encouraged you to reassess where you are. Figure out what you can do, how you can do it. And the very number one thing you can do, it's a great starting point, is pray. We've been praying for the growth of the Winnetka congregation for a couple of years now. And every day at 5 o'clock, we pray. And we involve ourselves in that prayer. And so I want to challenge you when you're praying on behalf of Winnetka, tag along, praying for our national leaders, that they will become people of principle and character. James Garfield was one of our presidents, albeit for a short time. He was a member of the body of Christ, actually disciples of Christ, but some historians mark him as a member of the church. He was known to say we would not have cabinet meetings on Sundays. When they pressed him why, he said, I have a commitment that is greater than any cabinet meeting. And he was talking about gathering together with the saints. We need men of that caliber, of that conviction, who will get us back on track. Pray for them. Pray for them. Well, the lesson is yours. Lesson, again, was not intended to show the plan of salvation, but rather, again, just to show God has a plan. And man has deviated from the plan. Man needs the message of the gospel. So we need to take that message to them. But if there's any who might be subject to the invitation, any way that we could help spiritually, we invite you to come while we stand and sing.